This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC 312 Du Plessis versus Strickland 2, and also Zhang versus Suarez, giving you my thoughts, predictions on the entire 13-bout card, taking place in, where is this? Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And what's fascinating about that is when we look at the previous card, the one that's happening this Saturday, the Adesanya and Imavov, taking place in Saudi Arabia, the complexity and the juxtaposition of this card is when you look at the Saudis and how they're more than likely going to try to judge in favor of the Saudis, it's actually the opposite for the Australians. And this is an Australian heavy card. The difference being that the Australians hate Australians. They will do whatever they can to make sure that the Australians do not win. It's like, oh, our guy did pretty well. Don't want to look racist, give it to the other guy. So keep that in mind. Not all the Australians are going to win this entire card, but very, very interesting main and co-main events because there's a lot to talk about in this entire card. If you don't like 2-hour-long MMA videos on the YouTubes, probably stop this now because I'm going to give you a lot of analysis that I've kind of gathered doing all this research on these fighters, and particularly in the main and the co-main, because being that they're the title fights and they are some of the most elite fighters in that division, it's going to be me rambling on. But great entire card itself. We've got, the introduction of Alexander Topuria, which we'll just get started right now, actually. Let me get him up here because we got Alexandre Topuria, El Cazador, which I believe is the warrior or some shit, versus newcomer Colby Thicknesse, which I'm not a big fan of the, rhyming nickname. He should have been like Colby the Thicknesse or Colby KOK Thicknesse, something to break that up. But very short notice because originally it was going to be Cody Haddon taking on Topuria on his UFC debut. What I find fascinating about that is that Thicknesse actually wrestled or grappled Cody Haddon back in 2015, and he ended up winning that bout, I'm assuming. Kind of cut off at the end, but Thicknesse, trains with Alexander Volkanovski more or less around the city kickboxing, area. And what I gather from him is that he's a decent enough fighter. I mean, black belt in jiu-jitsu, he does like to get the fights to the ground. He has serviceable enough striking. And when I'm looking at his category of fights, he's fighting guys that aren't necessarily impressive. There's nothing there that couldn't give me a real concrete answer about this guy because he just looks like a middling 135er, well-rounded everywhere. Like these young guys, he's 25. He is a bit tall for the weight class. He's 5'9", a good reach at 70 inches. But when I look at him, it's just, hey, there's another middleweight or another bantamweight that just fights like every other bantamweight. Like these, what's that dude's name? Like the controller, I forget his last name, and the dude that trains with, what is it, Bumzuka, Dennis Bazooka, like those types of guys. Like they're good everywhere, but they're not great everywhere. I'll give it to the guy when I'm watching a fight with him. I believe this is like second or third pro bout. He does get dropped. He does get hurt pretty badly. Up kick to the face, hurts him bad. Then a knee flush to the mouth, drops him bad. And what I like to see is that he likes to fight back. He doesn't just quit. He doesn't ball up. So that's a good sign from him. But he does need to get the fights to the ground, and he's fighting a Topuria. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to just strictly say, hey, Alexander Topuria is going to win this fight because he's Ilya's brother. But when I'm looking at him, there was a fight that he had where he got beat up, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But he went from fighting at 19, then taking like 5 years off, and then, more or less fighting bums. And he's handling these bums as you expect. He takes them down. He's got a BJJ black belt. He's got Greco-Roman wrestling, just like his brother. He fights a lot like his brother, not as polished as him when it comes to the striking. They have the same stance. They do practically the same things, which is a good sign, but it's just not Ilya. So I'm not sold on Alexander quite yet. I think he has the adequate skills to come into the UFC and do some damage, but we're not quite sure. He hasn't really fought anyone as good as he has, or as good as he is. And this is pretty much a very, let's find out and see which one of these two prospects is going to, advance. Because if Alexander Topuria comes in here and he fights like his brother, I mean, stiff body shots, very good wrestling, takes this dude down and beats him up. I think he's a more superior and more well-rounded fighter. It's just that what is he like when it comes down to the later rounds? Does he get tired? He's been steamrolling his dudes. And that one fight that he lost against a fighter, what's his name, Ivo or some such, Ivo Ivanov, this dude at 19 years old fought this like 30-some-year-old guy, jacked. Picture Gleison Tebow at 135. And this dude's like a twinky little 135 or 19-year-old kid. He's able to take him down, control him, because he has the skills to do so. He eventually gets tired. He gets taken down, and it's like, oh, maybe this is the end of this kid. He jumps up for a nice armbar, a very picture-perfect armbar, but he couldn't complete it. But it was a very nice attempt. He eventually gets tired and TKO'd. But those little moments there with both men is that they are willing to fight back through adversity. And with Alexander Topuria, him already having a loss like that, I think it would make him a better fighter overall because he's already faced that. He knows what fatigue is. He knows what it is to have a fighter not necessarily make it easy for you. And to Colby's, credit as well, he's been in that situation where he's nearly finished. But if it comes down to the pure skill, I do think that Topuria, being the stronger of the two men, he's going to be the shorter man by 2 inches. I don't have odds on it yet. Haddon was a slight favorite over Topuria, which I couldn't disagree with. He was minus 160-ish, minus 155. That makes sense because he's more proven. And we'll talk about Haddon when he has the next fight because I am a fan of this kid. I think he's a very good prospect. For Colby, he's no Haddon. He's not as proven as he is. He's not spectacular anywhere. I think this is one of those moments where if Topuria, just being the stronger of the two men, can win just based off of strength, getting him down, getting him top control. He loves getting the crucifix position. He has very good jiu-jitsu. I think the jiu-jitsu will cancel out. It'll just come down to the strength, and I think Topuria can get it done. And this is, again, it's an up-in-the-air type of fight. I think they are both visually, based off of their tape, around the same level. I haven't seen either man fight top competition. I have seen Colby essentially run through what I like to call the Philippine bum scene, just running through guys because he can take them down. I expect that Colby's going to obviously try to work the jiu-jitsu on Topuria. I don't think it's going to work. At that point, he's going to try to strike, and if Topuria is the one engaging in the grappling, getting him down, he's probably going to have the stronger top position that leads to a decision. Thicknesse was impressed with his toughness, so I don't expect either man to get finished. Topuria, I'm not sure about his gas tank, but him being in the corner of his brother, and essentially, if he mimics what his brother does, I think he can have a ton of success. He's not as heavy-handed as he is. I'm fascinated by this main fight, this first fight of the night. So I was excited for the Haddon fight. Now that we have Thicknesse, Thicknesse will present some issues for Topuria. That name, man, that name just gives me issues. But give me Topuria to win this one by a decision. Next bout, we've got Hung Sung Park versus Tumendemberel. I'll be quick with this one since I spent more time talking about the Topuria fight. But we have the odds in favor of Park, peace of mind, that is. Minus 275. Comeback on the Art of Knockout is plus 235. Very quick. Tumendemberel, he hits hard. He apparently has a judo background, I believe, and decent enough submissions, but he's not polished anywhere. I don't particularly think he's a very good fighter. His last fight, let me explain about his last fight. If you lost money on this guy and you thought he was robbed, he was not robbed. He definitely won the first round. You can give him that based on him doing some damage, but he lost the second and the third round. He essentially dropped Hernandez, but he just a little too late. You cannot win a fight based off of one moment when that moment comes with like 10 seconds left on the fight and you did nothing on top of that. I would expect him to work on his setups to his big looping punches, which would be jabs and, feints. But if he comes out here doing what he did against Hernandez, I think Park is just a more clean, well-rounded fighter. But he gets dropped in almost every single one of his fights. He gets hurt in some manner. His defense isn't great. I am expecting him to look better in this spot here. He is the older man. Funny enough, he doesn't look like the older man. I would expect Tumendemberel to be the older one, but it's 29 for him and 26 for Tumendemberel. I think this is a big trap type of fight because although I do expect Sung to mix things up better, he's got, in my opinion, the better grappling, the better offensive wrestling, the better top control. There's a chance that Tumendemberel can maybe land a punch and hurt Park or possibly catch him in a submission. It's a very much so a some bullshit might happen in this fight, so I rather stay away from it personally, but I will still go with Park to win this one. He is a bit of a finisher. Some might look at him and say, hey, you could not finish Shannon Ross. In the previous fight, Shannon being one of the weakest flyweights in UFC history, gets dropped and hurt by a lot of people. Park, though, I was impressed because he hurt him multiple times, and he ended up finishing him, I believe, in the third round. It's one thing to finish a guy quickly, but it's also another thing to dominate a guy completely. Maybe he doesn't have the same kind of knockout power as the previous opponents for Shannon Ross, but he still beat his ass. Give me Park. It's just, man, I am so worried that this guy's going to get clipped or dropped that I'll stay away from it because he will have a reach disadvantage by, 5 inches? And when Tumendemberel throws those punches, they've come correct. These Mongolians don't play around. So I'll stay away from it betting wise, but I'll take Park to get a decision here. I think he will more than likely get hurt, but still recover, clinch, get him to the ground, and get some control time. But yeah, I'll stay away completely with my money, but give me Park to win this one by decision. Next bout, we've got Kevin Jousset, 31 years old, versus the captain, Jonathan Micallef, who's 25 years old. Funny thing about them is that they are both former Hex welterweight champions, both coming out of Australia. The Frenchman, obviously, Kevin Jousset, primarily fought in Australia most of his career. And this Micallef character as well. He's 7-1. And what are the odds on these dudes? Let's see here. Kevin Jousset, minus 215 comeback on Micallef is plus 185. If I'm being completely blunt, I don't think Jonathan Micallef is going to last in the UFC very long. He is a 6 foot tall welterweight. He's got a 77-inch reach, which in the regional scene, especially the Australian regional scene, does him wonders. Okay, he's a big dude, likes to grapple. I believe high-ranking jiu-jitsu. Let me take a look. I don't know what his belt is, but I do know that he has very good ground game. And on top of that, not much of a striker. He is one of these guys that you don't have to be a good striker to be able to strike. You can throw punches, you can throw kicks, you can be athletic, but he doesn't know how to set things up. He primarily just throws punches to try to get you to the ground and try to work his ground game. As we saw in the Contender Series, he ended up submitting a dude by the name of, Ibo or something like that? Mohamed Abdo, which Abba was able to take him down pretty easily, and he just got caught in a triangle since he was 5-0 as a Canadian. Yeah, you 5-0 Canadians, hardly any skill. Micallef, not impressed by this guy at all. I've seen this dude get completely rocked. If he cannot get a takedown, he tends to panic. Again, very good ground game. Kevin Jousset, judo background, black belt in jiu-jitsu. This dude trains out of city kickboxing, very good low kick game, very good feint game. When I mention these feints from the city kickboxing guys, they have some of the deadliest feints. What I mean by that is that you don't need to actually hit somebody with a feint. You don't have to even throw a punch. It's just the flinch will do enough. And with a guy like Micallef, it may or may not work for him because with his level of striking that I've seen, and again, he could have leveled up within that time. Either he will completely panic wrestle, which might be a positive thing for him because he might catch Jousset out of position. But Jousset's got very good takedown defense himself. He's got good output. He hits relatively hard, and he's a very good decision striker. He can do enough to win a fight. I think as long as Jousset does not tire out, he's going to have a good time here. I think he's going to put a decent amount of beating on Micallef, especially in the clinch when Micallef is trying to engage and try to get takedowns, where he's going to be landing elbows to the face, he's going to be landing knees to the body. He's going to put a battering on Micallef. Whether he finishes him, I'm not 100% sure. The dude is a pretty tough guy. He's taken a beating before. And again, Jousset's not really known to get finishes unless it's like weak-ass fighters like Kiefer Crosby, who has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but seems to choke on it all the time. Give me Jousset by a decision. I think he's just a more well polished guy. And if you look at his last fight with Brian Battle and think like, oh, this guy got beat by Brian Battle, Brian will do that to you. He's got a nasty pace. He moves forward and he beats guys up, especially French guys in France. Give me Jousset by a decision. I really don't see much in Micallef. I mean, if you can stuff his takedowns, I think you can put an ass whooping on this guy. But yeah, Jousset by a decision. Okay, Cody Steele's up next, lightweight bout versus Rongzhu. And the odds, before I go on to my rant about Cody Steele, Cody is minus 225. Zhu is plus 190. I'll give you obviously a very quick breakdown on Rongzhu. The guy, if you look at primarily his UFC run, the first one, you'd not be impressed by the guy. The guy was getting taken down. He's getting beat up by weak competition compared to like his skill set, his striking ability, the amount of fights that he's had, his youngness. He's 24 years old. His height, his reach, you would think this guy would kind of run through these smaller lightweights, and that was not the case. This guy lost to Kazulu Vargas by him just not doing enough. He even hurt him in the third round, and he didn't capitalize. He ended up beating Trailer Park dude. What's his name? No. Whatever. Brandon something or other. Very weak competition, only in the UFC because he was on short notice. He beats him, and then he gets beat by a very good fighter in the what the hell's his name with the funky teeth? The Bolivian dude. Is he Bolivian? Let me go back and check now. I'm bothered. I tend to forget fighters' names, but I don't forget their goofy faces. Bahamundes. He gets choked out by Bahamundes, which no foul there. Bahamundes has been leveling up, but then you see his rise back into the UFC. He's just knocking dudes out. He's learned how to stuff takedowns, great hips. He's using athleticism. And in his fight back in the UFC against Chris Padilla, he, again, seemingly has an issue where he's a little too full of himself and he doesn't take shit too seriously. And he ended up getting caught in the face with a nasty elbow that broke his eye. Like, I thought he was building up momentum, and then bam, he got caught. And that is an unfortunate situation for him, but it was his fault for not doing enough damage early. He just kind of played into Padilla's game, which was still working for him. He was winning the fight. At least, I guess he wasn't actually. I looked at the scorecards. He was not winning, but he was doing enough to start winning the fight at that point. Just more volume, letting his hands go. So it's understandable why he's going to be the underdog here against Cody Steele, who is what I like to think he's a blue chip type of prospect at 29. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, wrestling accolades. He's got a plethora of grappling experience. He's grappled dudes like Gregory Rodriguez and some other dude that I was impressed. He did Ty Rotolo. So this guy he's a scrapper, right? And that is my number one gripe with this kid, is that he likes to scrap. And my rant about Cody Steele is he should win this fight with no problem. I see 87% people picking him to win this fight. I don't fully agree with that. And the reason is Cody is, I think he's got some bad fight IQ. Let me put it to you. I think he is maybe too overhyped. And what I say by that is, when you look at his individual skills, you see him wrestle, it looks great. When you see him grapple, he looks great. His striking, on the other hand, it's not there yet. Man, you go right now on Instagram and you look at Cody Steele's own post, meaning he posted this himself, him sparring. You should not be posting images or videos of you getting clipped in sparring practice. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not a good look. This guy is a little reckless with his defense. He's very reckless. He gets hit too much for my liking for a guy that can wrestle this well and has good jiu-jitsu. Yes, he will go for takedowns, but he likes to strike. It's like he's got the fever. He's got the knockout fever. And I'm looking at his fight in the Contender Series. I had like some money on this kid on a parlay against Chasen Blair, and Chasen Blair is stuffing his takedowns, and Chasen Blair is landing good shots on him. And I'm getting worried because I'm like, yo, Chasen is looking decent, but he's slowing down. He eventually stops him with a body shot. But what I have an issue with Cody is I don't trust this guy at like these odds, nearly 3-1, that he's not going to come out here and just try to strike with Rongzhu to prove a point. Rongzhu's a very competent striker. He's leagues above Cody on the feet, better kicks, faster hands, just better setups, better head movement. And I did check in Rongzhu's eye. He didn't need surgery. He did get some fractures, so he didn't need surgery. He was going to heal up fine. Whether that's going to impact him in this fight, if he gets hit with a sharp ass jab, will it inflame? Maybe. So all the intelligent strategy is on the side of Cody. But what I hate about Cody, he's again 7-0, and the guy is, to me, unreliable yet to come out here and not strike with Rongzhu. Like, he can probably do fine, can probably knock him out. He swings hard, he hits hard, but not hard enough to maybe one hit quit this kid, and not hard enough for me to expect him to come out here and just dominate him with power. Like, I need to see this guy take him down and beat him up and try to submit him. So I have to pick Cody. I think he can beat him in any possible way he wants. But if he comes out here a little too like aggressive and too hyped up, like I'm gonna come out here and knock this dude out because my shit doesn't stink and I'm 7-0 and I've grappled much better competition than this dude, and he tries to strike with him and he gets dropped or knocked out, and I don't want to have that dude on my parlay. I don't want to have this guy on my money line. I don't want money on this kid. So give me Cody to win this one. I'm gonna say submission because I'm expecting him to not be a moron. Come out here and sub this guy. Like, just do it. Take him down, beat him up on the mat. Like, you can get a knockout with him parallel to the mat. Like, you can do that too. So I'm hoping that he has better fight IQ this time, like better game planning. And I even went back to make sure, like maybe it was just because he was in the Contender Series that he needed to make an impact. No, he does that in a lot of his fights. He likes to strike. So that's my main gripe with Cody and my main rant about him. I think he is a very good fighter. I think he's got a lot of that potential, but I've seen a lot of dudes waste that potential by thinking that they are now top shit with striking. So, and they get knocked the fuck out. So give me Cody Steele by second round submission. I still think Rongzhu is incredibly dangerous in this fight. Do not underestimate this man. Moving on, we've got Wang versus Bruna Brasil. And the special one, Bruna Brasil, 31 years old. What are the odds for this? Okay. Bruna is plus 300. Kong, the Joker Wang, is minus 400. And putting it briefly here, I don't think the Bruna Brasil that we saw against Molly McCann is a new version of Bruna just because she's training at the Fighting Nerds. Yes, the Fighting Nerds gave her a brilliant game plan against Molly, which was, hey, Molly's an idiot. She will have to come rush you. How about you knee her in the stomach every time that she bum rushes you, and then you hit her. And then with her dropping down in weight, I thought it was actually a great game plan. Like, her body, Molly's body, could not take body shots in her previous fight against, I believe, Belbita. Belbita hit her hard to the stomach and she went and grappled for her life. So Bruna had a great game plan. Other than that, what Bruna was doing in between of, Molly rushing her and kneeing her and beating her ass was fuck all. This girl is not a very high output kind of girl. And when I look at the output between them, strikes landed per minute for Bruna, 2.94. And to me, I think it should be less. I think the fight with Molly, where she landed more strikes, it upped it up a bit. This girl does fuck all at times. She tries to set up her head kick. Most of the time, you can definitely eat away at the minutes, meaning that when you are in a fight and you are judging it, and if one fighter's not doing anything and all she's doing is countering and backing up, which she has good movement up until she gets tired, and she's backing up, right, putting herself in bad positions, and then she's countering with like a head kick or something. If it lands, it's great. Wow, you look fantastic. But in that in between, if say Wang is throwing leg kicks, body shots, and she's more active, which she is, she's got a strikes landed per minute 5.81. She throws way more volume. She's going to be winning that round. So to me, despite the absolute cuckery that she pulled in her last fight against, former LFA champion in Gabriela Fernandez, she's a much better striker. I think she's way better than her. And The only problem is the psychology behind Kong Wang with her completely fucking up her last fight. What I need to see from Kong, because I will explain to you the moment that she screwed up. This girl was looking great against Fernandez. She wasn't getting touched. She was just super confident, overconfident. And there was one moment, and this is where it was like, oh my God, you're a moron. And I'm hoping that her coaches literally pinpointed this moment. You go back and watch that fight. Get to the point where she gets rocked with a head kick. She gets rocked. She kind of stumbles a bit. And in that moment, she made a decision that cost her the fight. It wasn't her getting hit because it's a fist fight. It doesn't matter how much better you are than your opponent. And she was much better that night. She ended up just losing. It's that you have to respect your opponent and you have to fight intelligently. She gets rocked, and she instantly, while rocked, is trying to get it back from Fernandez, which was a stupid move. She didn't want to retreat. She didn't want to like shake it off. She didn't want to put on at least a good poker face. She wanted it back. She ended up getting dropped and choked out. Had she literally retreated a bit, not necessarily ran backwards or just kind of reset herself and started engaging with like kicks to the body while she recovered, I think she would have been fine. That would have just been one decent moment for Fernandez, and she wouldn't have gotten dropped and choked out. That was it. Other than that, I think she would have whipped her ass continuously. She would have probably won the decision. She was beating the body. She was looking great, man. It's just that the overconfidence in Kong Wang is what cost her that fight, and it cost her against a very good opponent and a former champion and an outside organization. I think Kong is going to destroy Bruna Brazil, right? I don't think it's Bruna's not a high IQ fighter, okay? I don't care how many fake glasses she's going to be putting on. It's not going to help her in those moments where she's not throwing punches. I don't think she's going to be able to get Kong Wang down. I think Kong Wang is just too much of a specimen, and she's just a better overall striker, way more aggressive. It's, again, Kong Wang's fight to lose. So give me Kong Wang to get a first or second round knockout on this girl. I think she's going to fight more intelligently and beat the shit out of Bruna Brazil. This girl, I mean, I was a little high on her just based off of her skill set, but the girl will gas herself out, retreating, going backwards with too much footwork, not throwing enough combinations, not throwing enough volume, and Kong Wang's going to be in her face, just a little less aggressive and doing numbers and damage on her. Give me Kong Wang, second round knockout. Next bout, very good fight here at featherweight. We've got Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. The odds have it in favor, more than likely, Santos. He is the better fighter. Minus 190. Come back on Jack Jenkins is plus 165. With this fight, I was going not necessarily back and forth, but I wanted to see what is the most likely outcome here. We've got an Australian fighting in Australia versus Gabriel Santos, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning. Well, Australians don't want to seem racist, so Gabriel Santos probably already has a few scorecards under his name. But the kid, he is 5'9", very good, training with Shutu Box. We all know who he trains with there. 11-2. This guy has fought in his debut a top level guy in Lerone Murphy, and then after that, he did get knocked out by Onama. Oh Lord, the David Onama. I call him Crunchy Black, but he gets knocked out by David Onama, and that was around the time that Onama had just recently lost to Nate the Train. So people were kind of low on Onama. I was not. I like, this dude is still very good, and he's still very dangerous with nasty power. And Santos was still doing work on this guy, taking him down, controlling him. This guy is just incredibly well-rounded, especially for a young age at 28. He is a very high-level 28-year-old. When I want to see a prospect entering like the 28, 29, 30 range, I need to see the ability to control dudes on the ground with jiu-jitsu, the ability to get it to the ground with wrestling, good striking, good defense, good chin. And Santos, in his last fight, he displayed all those things. He displayed them in every single one of his UFC fights. It just said he didn't get the outcomes that he wanted. He arguably could be 2-1 in the UFC. Even that, had he won the Murphy fight, they wouldn't have given him Onama. He could have been 3-0 in the UFC. Honestly, I go back and I scored the fight with Murphy, and it was very close. Don't get it wrong, but I do think he did enough to win that fight in the first 2 rounds. That second round, I believe it went to Murphy, but he had him in an armbar, and he had very good position there. So I would have leaned Santos. I don't consider it a robbery, but it was a really close fight. And then his fight with Yazi or Yija. Some might not consider him to be very good. I like his style. I don't know how well it's going to translate into the UFC. We saw against, a high level dude that's not Chinese. He beat the shit out of him in Santos. Jack Jenkins, what we know about him, he's a good striker, very good striker actually, and hard as fuck leg kicks, breaks people's legs with the leg kicks. But what else do we know about him? He decent enough, grappler. He's not a better grappler than Santos. Um, he hits hard, but his hands, I'm not really sold on his hands. He's primarily a kicker, and he's very good with the kicks. What sold me on Santos winning this fight is how easily Herbert Burns, even when he was exhausted, was taking down Jack Jenkins. It took Jack Jenkins a lot longer to knock him out than what it should have. And I'm not counting him out based off of his fight with Machine Gun Moscow. Chep has been more or less underrated and undervalued since he got into the UFC. So him getting tossed like that and getting his arm broken, maybe it made him a little bit more weary. But I don't know, man. Like in retrospect, the dude is like a hard low kicker, and that's pretty much it. When we're comparing the two men, I think Santos can keep him on the ground. I think he can take his back. If he fights really smart here, he would just out grapple Jack, not take any low kicks, and he should be okay. But those low kicks, though, those are an incredible equalizer in the skill gap, meaning that if he kicks him enough, and these two men are both switch stance kind of fighters, so that might be in play a lot where they're just switching stances. So that lead leg of not the lead leg, but the rear leg of Jenkins is there to continuously crack the shit out of his shin. So that's going to be an interesting little foot battle. But ultimately, if it does go in the way of Santos, where he's getting him to the ground, controlling him there, getting in the body lock, because he's going to be the taller guy, longer legs, easiest way to win that fight is get him to the ground, take his back, kind of beat him up from there. Because Jack Jenkins on the feet, it's still a risk that he can kick the absolute crap out of you. So he's an interesting cat. Like he's not out of this fight. I don't think it's like, oh my God, it's Gabriel Santos or nothing. Jack is a very good kickboxer, and if he can stuff takedowns, which I doubt he will eventually, I think Santos will get him down. But if he can stuff him, he can do some damage on him. I think Santos is a very good striker as well. It's just those hard ass low kicks will completely change the dynamic of a fight. So I will still go with Santos to win this fight. I will take him to win this one by a decision. I think, again, easiest path to victory, take his back, control him there, work submissions. But Jack, I've kind of in retrospect looked at him a bit differently. I don't quite think he's going to be a top featherweight in that division. I think Santos can go further because of his diversity of skill. Jack, he's getting taken down and controlled by dudes like Don Shanis. Like that was a little too close of a fight for me. And I still think that the Jamal Embers fight was a bit of a robbery. So, yeah, give me Santos by a decision for this fight. Next bout here, we've got Tom Nolan versus Vyacheslav Borshchev, Slava Claus versus the Big Train. 8-1 for Nolan. He's going to be the taller guy, 6'3", long reach, 4 inches of advantage, 73 inches. Slava Claus, 5'11", 69-inch reach. This is one of the few fights where Slava does not need to worry about getting taken down. Tom Nolan's not going to do that. And the odds have it in favor of Borshchev. -150 comeback on Nolan is +130. Realistically, this is Slava Claus' fight to lose. He's a much, much better striker. Tom Nolan, let me explain something about Tom and let me know if you agree with me on this. But with his frame at 6'3" and his reach, I think I wrote it down beautifully. Let me go back to my notes because I really do think my my sentence here might be the most accurate sentence about Tom Nolan. It is, let's see here. All right. I called him a dangerous greenhorn. He's a tall striker who is offensively dangerous and utilizes his weapons excellently, but does not utilize his reach effectively enough due to his aggressive nature. So what I mean by that is that with his effective weapons, nasty elbows. He uses those pointy bastards. He uses his knees very well. He does have very good reach strikes, teeps to the body, low kicks, good jab, but he does not use it well enough because he's not disciplined enough, meaning that he will get a little too aggressive and he puts himself in a pocket in danger and then he can get cracked. He is a tall lightweight. And with tall lightweights, they tend not to be the most coordinated. And with that, their heads stick straight up in the air and they're there to get hit. This guy does keep his head in the air. He's been hurt, if not dropped, in every single one of his UFC fights, excluding the one with Bogdan, who sucks in the Contender Series. And Vyacheslav, another guy who is kind of chinny. He gets hurt a lot. He's getting dropped by a lot of his opponents. Let's go. He got dropped by not Yontop, but Chase Hooper dropped him. Sadikov dropped him. He got not Mahashat. He beat the shit out of him, and I profited. Mike Davis beat his ass. The dude is a phenomenal striker. He's the more competent of the two. Hard low kicks, beat the shit out of Nolan's legs, nasty body shots, big torso hit the body. And the most important thing is dangerous, dangerous counters. This guy will move backwards. He will time you and he will let Tom get too aggressive and he can crack him and knock him out. I like Borshchev for that particular reason. The thing with Tom, though, he's only 24. So even though what I see from him, and this is essentially in every single one of his fights, and when I say he got hurt by a lot of dudes, he got knocked out by Moda because, again, he rushed in instead of using his reach. He got dropped by this loser in Martinez, literally going in for the finish. And then even though he didn't get dropped by Reyes, he did get hurt by Reyes. Reyes was just too old and just past his prime to do anything. And I was so sold that Reyes was going to do well, but Reyes just did not perform. He was looking good early, and then, Tom was just doing whatever Tom wanted because he had no danger there. Against Vyacheslav, there's a lot of danger, but if this guy can learn to use his jab and stay patient on the outside and stay measured, he can be incredibly dangerous, move your head. The dude has every capable factor to do very well in the UFC. Get that number up from 99, lightweight in the world, a lot closer to the top 15, top 20. It's just, again, the dude is a little too reckless for my liking. And you can't necessarily unteach that. Like when he gets in there and he gets that, he starts seeing red, which is usually Slavakov's red ass face, he will go for that kill. And in those moments, he is so vulnerable. It's like a 50-50, like, hey, if you land on me, I'm going to go out. But if I land on you, I can probably get you out. And the fact that Slavaklaus is very, very tough, even though he's getting dropped, he's a fighter, man. He will not stop fighting. I've seen Tom cover up and give up. Give me Slavaklaus to win this one by a knockout give me the first 2 rounds, one of the two. It's still super dangerous. So even if I do have money on Slavaklaus, and he has cost me in the past, but usually when I look at him and I see how good of a striker he is, he's able to beat guys like Sadikov, just that Sadikov beat his ass in the second round, caused a 10-8 to cause a draw. He's a very, very, very good striker. And in this fight, no threat of a takedown. And when there's usually no threat of a takedown, it's when he shines. And I think in this case, he's going to shine and give shiners to Tom Nolan. So give me Slavaklaus. I'll put round number 1. Next bout here, we've got Quillen Salkilld versus Anshul Jubli, King of Lions. I had a joke about Jubli, and I completely forgot what it was. But they're both 7-1, 6'1" or 6 foot tall each, 75 inches for Quillen. Jubli is 69 inches. Okay. What about Jubli here? Let me tell you about Quillen, but before that, what are the odds on this fight? Because it should be minus 355 for Salkilld. Come back on Jubli is plus 290. That's pretty accurate. I think Quillen Salkilld is very competent. He's a very good fighter. He's very good in the feet, in the pocket, with elbows, grappling. He's got a jiu-jitsu black belt. The guy can really do it all. I really like this kid. I like his mustache. I even saw some of his merch when they were in the Contender Series when he fought that Missouri boy. What was this dude's name? Price or something? Gage Young. I liked his merch. It was pretty cool. The guy is just better than Jubli. He's better than him on the feet. He's a more competent striker. He's a higher IQ guy. He's very good at actually engaging in the wrestling, going for the double leg and actually taking your back and then working off of that. He's actually got some skills off of his back where he did get taken down. Who was that dude? Yeah, Damon Fran took him down, controlled them, and this guy is just pushing off of the hips. He eventually catches him in a triangle. No, it wasn't a triangle, was it? He got somebody in a triangle? No, he got him in the triangle, got out of the triangle. He eventually takes his back, chokes him out. Like very impressive stuff from this kid. And with his frame, he uses that reach very well. He uses that frame well. Jubli, when I look at this guy, instantly when I seen this guy fight, I'm like, this guy is not UFC caliber. I even picked I don't know if I picked the dude Breeden to beat him, but I know for a fact I bet him to beat him. So I was ecstatic when he started barking at this motherfucker. But when I'm looking at his career in retrospect, the guy uses his frame. He's a big dude. He can wrestle. He can strike. He hits hard, but he's very rudimentary with his striking. No head movement, no setups. He can throw a jab, but nothing polished. He uses his size to get people down and beat them up. He did that to Jekka. Jekka even at one point got up, and Jekka has no ground game. And he hit him with a nasty head kick that I'm surprised didn't knock him out, because I'm still kind of high on Jekka. I think he's very talented, but he needs to work on some things. So if he can develop, he can be a very good 145er. But Jubli being a 155er, being that big, fighting like in the Asian regional scenes and whatnot, he was just using his size to beat up guys. And I'm looking at the fight with Breeden, knowing that Breeden's such a good boxer, not good anywhere else, but a good boxer, tough as well. He's boxing this dude's head off in the first round. It's just that Breeden stopped fighting for a bit. He started getting more volume on him. And for a fact, I am expecting Jubli to come out here and wrestle. With Quillen, he's so well-rounded, I don't think that's going to be a factor. Even if he does get taken down, I think he's going to be working off of his back with his jiu-jitsu black belt. I saw that Jubli is kind of working on his Greco throws. So, like, more, upper body, clinch engaging type of takedowns. I see Quillen having his way with them. I think if a guy like Mike Breeden can bully you, and when I say Jubli would just use his size, I mean that. Like, this guy was just a bully. He would like intimidate guys, just kind of moving forward. And then the moment Breeden's like, man, this guy's a pussy, I'm just gonna beat his ass. Jubli forgot how to fight. He was just like, oh shit. I don't like seeing that at all. Like, as a guy that, say, for example, if Jubli had won that fight and we never saw that, knowing that that's in him, I would hate to see that when I have money on the guy. That kind of shows me that this dude is maybe not what we like to consider a real fighter. He's fighting for money. He's a prize fighter, but we saw the true fighter in that fight against him and Breeden, and that was Breeden. Breeden may not be as good as he is, per se. Maybe it won't be as good as he will ever be. Jubli can go out and, maybe win a title in the regional scene, perhaps. But the fact that Mike Breeden was just tougher than he was, he had a nasty cut, his eye was bleeding, and he still went out there and punked Jubli. I don't ever want to see that from a fighter. So give me Quillen. This guy will make faces at you. This guy will get hit and just stick out his tongue, and then he'll start attacking your body and working you over. So give me Salkilld to actually get him in a submission, probably take his back, choke him out in the first round. I think in the beginning, Jubli will be using wrestling, maybe controlling Quillen for a bit. But I think Quillen's going to be doing well off of his back, threatening submissions, throwing elbows. And being that they are the same size, and Jubli really hasn't fought anyone that size, I think Quillen's going to have a field day with this dude. So give me Quillen to beat the shit out of Jubli. Next fight, we have got Jake Matthews opening up the main card versus Francisco Prado. And the odds have it in favor of, it's going to be Matthews. Yeah, Matthews minus 205. Come back on Prado is plus 175. Prado is moving up to 170, which may be a great thing. I saw a picture of him at 170, like him just looking juiced up. I mean, thick legs. The guy's a solid guy, right? Like you go back and you see his regional fights, and I thought this kid, given the right guidance, could become a real dangerous dude. He's only 22 years old. He's what they say, fresh-faced and bushy-tailed. He's 12-2. The guy has power. Taekwondo black belt, I believe. He will spin. He will throw spinning kicks. And I don't recall what his jiu-jitsu rank is. I believe it is, he's a purple belt. but the guy has nasty ground and pound. This dude is violence personified. He is just the Argentine Drew Dober, but just way more skilled and way more potential in my eyes because he's still very young. So uh, realistically, Jake Matthews, better fighter, more experience. He's been there, done that. They are both 155ers that moved up to 170. Jake Matthews has definitely improved over the years, well enough that his boxing's gotten better, his wrestling's gotten better. I think he's got the experience enough to just control Prado on the ground, which he has before. The issue with this, just to be honest, like Prado moving up, the guy is looking real strong. And if he can land on Jake, Jake is a guy that has completely let people down in the past. And me in particular, I remember talking to somebody about Jake and saying, like, yeah, I think Jake is definitely a guy that can let you down, but I think he's made the right improvements. And that was against Semmelsberger. And I had one parlay with Jake being told, like, nah, don't bet Jake, don't bet him. I'm like, fuck it, I'll put him on one parlay. And everything was looking good. Then Jake comes up looking good against Matthew Semmelsberger, taking him down, gets dropped. Pretty bad. Enough to lose the fight. Like, I mean, he is winning at this point the whole fight, and then he gets dropped, loses the round. And that's what Jake kind of does. He's a habitual, lets you down a lot. And he still, though, like, I saw his fight with Andre Fiallo, and I'm like, man, this guy's hands have improved to the point that I'm confident that he can, protect himself against guys like, oh no, he's on the ground with Semmelsberger. Him losing to Michael Morales is not a bad look. The turning point for me was the Phil Rowe fight. Phil Rowe, I expected him to do well. He was doing well. He busted up his nose, and I finally saw a little bit more fight out of Jake Matthews. The problem is that doesn't necessarily mean he's not gonna, shit the bed again. Prado, skill for skill, not as good as Jake. I have to take Jake by a decision. He's gonna be really hard to finish Prado. Prado, again, tough guy. If this guy lands on you, he's gonna go after you. So I'm realistically rooting for Prado in this fight. I want to see him do well. I like his style. This guy is like, we saw him get his ass beat bad by a guy that I'm no longer on the hype train in Zohuber. It's going to break his heart that he finds that out. But Zohuber was putting a beating on him, and he never gave up. He never quit. His eye was completely mangled. I like this kid a lot. I'm rooting for him, but realistically in my brain, it doesn't make sense that he's going to be able to move up and his skill is going to be developed as much. I know he's at ATTs training with good guys, but I still can't pick against Jake Matthews, despite the fact that, like, Jake, he's still Jake, but we shall see. Again, rooting for Prado. Got to go with Jake Matthews on this one by decision. I think he will be using his wrestling to take him down. I am hoping I am wrong, okay? Don't get it twisted. I want Prado to win this one, but with Jake's just overall experience, he's going to be taking this dude down. If Jamie Malarkey could take you down and you can't knock him out, then I think Jake Matthews can survive and take you down, weight class or not. Moving on, we've got Jimmy Crute versus Adolfo Bellato. Bellato, one of TigerBomb MMA's favorite dudes. I like this guy. I didn't meet him per se, but I did see him before he got into the UFC, and I recognized his tiger tattoos. I'm like, this motherfucker looks familiar. We're at weigh-ins for, I think, a Peloton fight, and the dude is like, he didn't look so big, but I saw the tattoos. I'm like, is this Bellato? I remember seeing this dude. Never got to talk to him, but I like his style, but there's negative things about Bellato I'm going to get to. And Jimmy Crute coming off of a essential self-imposed retirement slash, what do they call it? The suspension. Jimmy the Brute Crute, and another guy that I actually really used to like when he first came into the scene at 205. Number one, awesome umbrella tattoo. Big Resident Evil fan myself, so I was rooting for the boy. I'm like, hey, Jill Sandwich is up in this bitch. But the dude is 28 years old, and he's gone through essentially 2 retirements in his time. The dude gets man, I don't want to crap on Jimmy Crute too much, but I don't think I've seen what I needed to see from Jimmy Crute. At 28, I think he might be done, and I'm hoping I'm wrong about that as well. But there was a post that he had on Instagram where it's like, I'm too good to give up on this. And yes, he's got a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's a strong boy. His boxing, though, is what has caused him so much damage. The lack of head movement, the lack of improvement where I needed to see it. I don't think his head is in there. The fact that he's said, "Hey, I need to go away for a bit," and he's done that twice, is not a good look for me. That when you're already contemplating like, "Hey, I may not be cut out for this," that that thought can creep up on you mid fight. Okay. And if I'm being honest, like this is a very well matched fight. Um, it was supposed to be Crute versus a guy that I thought he was going to whip his ass, and that was Prachnio. But then they gave him Bellato, and Bellato, he's going to be the favorite for sure. But Bellato is he's a guy that also needs to work on some stuff. And I think that it's similar to a mirror match, except that Bellato is going to be confident in himself. He's highly confident. He's a bigger dude, imposing guy. I think his skill set is again, it matches Jimmy Crute's in the sense that they both kind of fight the same. They're both tanky men, don't really move their head too much. Bellato's been working on that. But with Crute, that first elbow that lands in the clinch from Bellato, or the first knee, and Jimmy Crute goes for a takedown and he can't get it because Bellato's just too juicy and thick. TST. Is he going to start thinking, oh fuck, like I'm not cut out for this? He's lost in Australia a couple of times, I think. Let me make sure. He lost versus no, that was a draw against Volkanovs, against Menafield the first time. And let's see, when was this? That was in Florida. I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of these fighters that kind of go away for a while and then whoopsie doodle, I'm back. I want to fight for my pride, and then they get beat up again. With Bellato, here's the things about Bellato. Doesn't really move his head. He's working on it. He keeps his hands up tight, but because he's such a tanky dude, he's not a fast man. He imposes his will on people. He pushes people against the cage, uses disgusting clinch work, elbows. He's a Terminator kind of guy. He can get it to the ground. I think between the two, he will have the better wrestling and, frankly, the better grappling. His striking is going to be better. Him training with Pereira is taking him a long way. Like this guy's going to be attacking the calf. Jimmy Crute's calf has been destroyed by Anthony Smith in the past. So he's, despite the fact that in his UFC debut he did get beat up by a guy that I think is absolute garbage in Poteria, that was just him being a little too overconfident, right? And he ended up getting the victory by proving like, hey, you might have put me down, but I'm still the better fighter. He ended up getting him down, beating him up. But Poteria was just too quick for him. Jimmy Crute's not going to have that issue here, or that is, Bellato's not going to have that issue because Jimmy Crute is also a very tanky, slow fighter. But if Jimmy Crute lands an overhand right, it could be the fastest one he's ever thrown. If it hits Bellato, that's just the issue. With Bellato, I like this kid. I like him a lot. I'm going to pick him to win. I think he's going to beat the crap out of Jimmy if, Bellato doesn't get clipped or something. Ultimately, for me, it's Bellato to win this one. I think he's the rightful favorite. I think he chose this fight on short notice because of like I'm better than this kid, and I think he's going to prove it in the cage where he's going to attack the calf. I think he's going to be way more measured, and on top of that, again, like the guy, despite him getting a little overzealous sometimes, he does have some pretty decent stand up. He does have some pretty decent defense. He's always keeping his hands up and tight. Yeah, it's just if he gets into these firefights, it's gonna be a 50-50, and I'm not a fan of that. But with him having a longer reach of, little over 3 inches, he's gonna use that. He's gonna pepper Jimmy Crute, whose head does not move out of that straight line. And yeah, but there's a lot of mystery with these guys. Like Jimmy Crute, if he comes back, looks like a completely different fighter. Don't expect that to happen, but it is a possibility, right? We shall see. Give me Bellato, second round TKO. All right, next bout, heavyweight. We've got one of the how does this dude's parents know he was going to be 6'7"? They called him Taliesin, Tall Eye Son. Texiera versus Justin Tafa. This one, let me get the odds because I don't have much to add to this fight because it's a heavyweight bout between two dudes that are going to try to knock each other out, and one of them's going to fall. It's just based off of which man's going to be the smarter of the two. Texiera is minus 150. Come back on Tafa is plus 130. Tafa, he's been in the UFC, hard low kicks. He's going to be the shorter guy, significant reach disadvantage by 9 inches, nearly 10 inches in reach for Texiera. Texiera, I know he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's super tall. Uh, I needed to make sure before anything if Tafa had a chance. And Tafa's always got a chance. He's got very good counters. That's all I wrote down for him because Tafa's not a top level heavyweight. I don't think he's going to go far. If this dude cannot knock out Williams over here, Carl Williams, he shows poor fight IQ. But you look at the fight with him and Austin Lane, Austin also being like 6'7", he was able to counter him well and knock him out. With Taliesin, the thing with him is that he's not a complete imbecile like Austin Lane. He actually has some decent boxing technique. Now, biggest worry, 7-0. I don't believe he has gone outside of the first round. I believe he is a first round finisher. Let me confirm that. Round one. No, he's gone to a decision. Round one, but mostly round one knockouts, right? He uses his reach well. He stays at distance, uses his reach well. When a fighter gets too aggressive, like in his last fight in the Contender Series against Arthur Lopez, he did get hit, but he stayed very composed, and he found a way to counter the guy and knock him out clean with a straight right hand. That's what I need to see, straight punches. And if he does that, Junior may be a Samoan. He's not a Samoan with the greatest chin. His dude's been knocked out before. I think it's going to be tall son Texiera knocking this dude out. Now, the biggest danger in a heavyweight bout with like Justin Tafa is you make a mistake against a guy like Tafa, you can eat a punch that knocks you out cold, and you're completely ruined, right? You can become the heavyweight Johnny Walker, which soon enough Johnny Walker will be the heavyweight Johnny Walker. So he has to be very careful. But I do expect him to be landing the straight punches, staying at range. If he can keep it at range and just plays it smart, he's going to win this fight. Like, he's got all the ability. You can get him to the ground, take his back. You're so big. All you got to do is take his back, wrap around the triangle, pound him out. But you don't get that sometimes with these fighters, especially the ones that like the knockout with heavyweights. So give me Texiera to win this one by knockout in the first round. I'm hoping he's not a complete imbecile. Next bout, co-main event, we've got the champion Weili Zhang versus Tatiana Suarez for the strawweight championship, 115. The odds have it in favor of my girl Weili Zhang, minus 140. Come back on Tatiana Suarez is plus 120. So I did some extensive research on both women because off the bat, if you look at it, Weili Zhang, 25-3, proven champion. She's 35 years old, 5'4", incredibly strong, incredibly athletic, incredibly gifted, great kicks, hard striking. She's a complete package. Great champion for that division, and she's proven it. Even incorporating her own grappling herself, where as of late she's been dominating girls. You see Amanda Lemos beat her ass. You see Yan Xiaonan beat her ass on the ground, choked her out, and then by the grace of God, she was able to get up in that fight. So I went back and rewatched that. And what's so funny is that she was out unconscious, but she moved enough at the end of the round. In that first round, Jan moved enough to confuse the ref to make it seem like she was just, oh my God, I'm good, but I can't breathe. I'm getting up. She moved enough, and then she went back to her corner. They allowed the fight to continue. It should have been called, but it is what it is. We went to a decision there. With Tatiana Suarez, she's 10-0. She's 34 years old. Honestly, should have been a champion years ago with injuries, with diagnoses. It's kept her away from the title. She could have been champion a long time ago. She's beaten great competition. She's dominated essentially everyone in her path to the title, but she's again 10-0 and maybe a little long in the tooth herself, but with her wrestling background, an Olympic hopeful, her black belt in jiu-jitsu, the amount of training that she's getting with Patchy Mix, on the mats and outside the mats in the bedroom. This girl's jiu-jitsu and her confidence and her chokes have definitely improved. But where it's at for her is the wrestling, is the ability to get it to the ground, pound out girls. And when I'm looking at it, the possibilities for Tatiana to get it to the ground, how high are those? Because her striking's not great, her entries aren't great, doesn't really move all that well. She's very stiff, very awkward. But does that matter if she just bum rushes and gets her to the ground? Weili Zhang, again, better movement. She's going to be really strong. And if she can keep it on the feet, no question, she's the better striker. Problem is, can she keep it on the feet? And after my analysis, my guess is no. I think there's going to be a moment where Tatiana's going to get it to the ground, and what she does with that position will be significant enough to allow her to continue to get takedowns after that round. So let's just say hypothetically, round number 1 starts, Weili Zhang is stuffing takedowns, and Joe Rogan's like, oh, we've got a fight here. It's interesting. What is Tatiana going to do to, oh, well, she's on the ground now. So with Weili Zhang, if she can keep it on the feet, it's going to be interesting. But how long is she going to keep it there? Well, you go back and you rewatch some fights. If Rose Namajunas is out grappling you, it's going to be a problem here. You know, no disrespect to the, the strawweight goat in Carla Esparza, but Carla was getting her down. Unfortunately, she got reversed and she got crucifix choked. But yeah, when I saw Yan Xiaonan trip this girl and get her to the ground, I was like, oh shit, Wiley's cooked. Tatiana Suarez, despite the fact that she's a little awkward on the feet, kind of slow, not going to be as, jacked as Weili Zhang, kind of looks a little, not impressive. When she gets you to the ground, she's going to do some damage on you. She's going to be looking for chokes. She's going to be looking for ground and pound. And the ability to keep Weili Zhang on the mat is going to be the significant thing, whether it be immediately, whether it be in round number 2, 3, 4, 5. I think Tatiana Suarez can more than likely do more damage on the mat than Weili Zhang can do to Tatiana on the feet. And what I mean by that is, if Tatiana is smart and defensively intelligent, meaning that even though she's not doing much on the feet and all she's doing is blocking shots, like covering up, there's going to be a moment eventually where she's going to be able to get Zhang down. That's like the game plan that I would assume if she's not able to get her down immediately. I do expect her to get her down at one point in the first round and do some damage, because if she's on top and landing ground and pound, that's going to be more significant than the kick to the body that she might land on Suarez that she kind of blocks because she's so awkward and like too far out of range, because Weili Zhang's going to want to keep it at kicking range. The other thing about it is that Weili Zhang's most dangerous, striking is the kicks. Her punches are fine, but nothing too spectacular. She's going to be at a reach disadvantage here by 3 inches. But with the kicking game of Weili Zhang, that's going to put her at a pretty bad disadvantage as well, because if Tatiana catches a kick and just drags her down, she ain't going to be kicking anymore if she survives that round. Give me Tatiana to win this one. I think it's her time. She's definitely earned it. She's fought everyone she needed to fight. She's choked out former champions. I expect her to get another submission here. Now, the fact that she's not been 5 rounds and she's not, extended that type of cardio in the UFC before, Weili Zhang's going to have that covered. So if that is like the biggest concern for me, is that if Tatiana does not look good cardio-wise and she is just gassed and Zhang is still fresh, she's got that experience that she might be able to eke out those, say, last 3 rounds and win. But I do expect Tatiana to get her to the ground eventually and do some damage, because if this girl can hold you down and beat you up like that, it's just a matter of time. And again, if Yan Xiaonan, without the wrestling background that she doesn't have, can trip Weili and keep her there for a bit, Tatiana's going to be able to do the same. Give me Tatiana, second round submission. That's truly it. At plus money, it's a matter of time before she gets you down and Khabibs your ass. Now, again, Weili Zhang, very dangerous. She could maybe throw a head kick, knock her out. If Suarez is defensively smart here, knowing that, hey, it's going to be a little whirlwind of kicks and punches, just be safe, bide your time. If she can do that, I expect her to dominate. Next bout, main event, Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2. And a couple things that came up because my general consensus would have been like Dricus is going to Dricus, right? It's idiotic to do any tape watch on Dricus du Plessis because he's just going to do whatever he wants and he's going to win. But he is 22-2. Only losses are to was it Roberto Soldic and some other Gareth McLennan or some shit like that back in the day. I remember seeing Gareth get knocked the fuck out a long time ago. Odds have it in favor of Dricus, -190. Come back on Sean Strickland is +165. So a couple things that I should mention to start off. The narrative machine of this fight. You know, the first fight, people are saying like, oh, Sean got robbed. Sean did not get robbed, okay? It was very close. The second round is where it is the most difficult. Round number 1, Sean. Round number 2, up in the air. Round number 3 and 4, Dricus. Round number 5, I still thought Dricus, but Sean had some good moments. Ultimately, it was given to Dricus du Plessis. He's the new champion, and he's proven himself to be a champion by choking out Israel Adesanya in a fight that I actually thought he was losing, but on the scorecards, he was actually up. So, number 1 narrative, judges love Dricus du Plessis. Why do they love Dricus du Plessis? Because he doesn't stop. Like, I look at both of these men's output and looking at it, they have very similar strikes land per minute. 6.18 for Dricus and then 6.1 for Sean. Sean, obviously, teep kick merchant, jab merchant, jabs you to death. His jab is really good, really solid and hard. Dricus even said it's like getting punched by a stone. And with Dricus, what he makes up in technique is just pure volume and diversity of strikes, head kicks, spinning back kicks, the ability to go for the takedowns, being the stronger man. So what I saw in that fight was Sean was looking unbeatable in the first round. He was landing that jab. The problem is he stopped throwing volume. He stopped throwing body kicks. He just stopped engaging. It's like he got frozen. And I have my theories about that psychologically with Sean, because we saw what Dricus did to him verbally, destroyed him. And there was a couple little cues that I noticed in that fight that made me think that maybe Sean doesn't want to be a champion. If you want to know more, you can ask me, but essentially my general consensus was like Sean is exhibiting signs that he's going to self-sabotage. And it seemed to be the case because in, say, round number 2, 3, and 4, the dude stopped throwing volume. Like, he was landing here and there, but Dricus was, despite not landing cleanly, was throwing more volume, and that's what the judges seem to like. And I come up with this theory is that, does a strike need to land for it to be significant? And ultimately, it's no. It doesn't have to land clean for it to be viewed as significant, because if you're a judge and you don't have the right angle, it could have landed in the shoulder and Sean just gets out of the way and it looks like it landed clean. And it is what it is. It just is what it is. So that's what I view from Dricus. Is it that he doesn't deserve to be champion? No, he threw those strikes, whether they landed or not. It is what it is. He ended up winning that fight. But with Sean being so defensive, he goes from offensively beautiful shit to being too defensive. And despite him not actually getting hit cleanly, he's not doing enough for the eyes of the judges. Like, you're not going to win on that defense. You may not be getting hit clean, but he's throwing 5, 6, 7, 8 punches, and maybe 2 or 3 of those are landing. Combined with your 0, it's 3-0 on strikes. So that's kind of how I viewed that first fight. With the ultimate kind of monkey wrench in this fight is that Sean at plus money automatically worth a shot, being that it was such a close fight. You know, he can tweak some things that can definitely lead him to victory here. But again, Dricus being Dricus, just pick Dricus. He's always going to win a fight despite anything. For the new listeners and new viewers, which I appreciate, by the way, anyone who recently subscribed, hats off to you. I really appreciate that. But for the new viewers, when Dricus came on the scene, I was not a fan. I was like, this guy sucks, as many of you might have been. But I compared him to fighting like he's got something up his butt, like this guy doesn't move well, and then he's knocking everybody out. And I was just like, wow, like this guy is so lucky to be in the UFC. And at a certain point, I started acknowledging, like, you know what? It doesn't matter what he's doing. It's just effective. And that kind of changed my perspective in fighting, is that it doesn't matter if it's technical. All that matters is that it is effective. Sean is the most technical dude in the roster when it comes to his boxing and his defense, but it not always effective because he's not actively throwing punches. So the biggest thing that is the biggest issue with this fight is that recently announced that Chris Curtis for sure is not going to be in his corner, which is great. Probably wasn't going to be in his corner anyways. But who is going to be in his corner for Sean is Alex Pereira. And that changes fucking everything because with Alex, dude does not miss. When it comes to Dricus du Plessis, my autism. No, is it not? Yeah, my autism is my superpower. It does not compare to the dark magic of the Chama man, the Brazilian fucking dragon from the jungles in Alex Pereira. And if there's any man that could tell Sean Strickland, like, stop being a pussy and throw more volume and throw a diversity of strikes, maybe to the body, low kicks, it's going to be Alex Pereira. That type of respect, like, hey, Chama, he's like, oh shit, fuck, okay. For that main reason, I actually do think Sean's super live here. I think the few adjustments Sean has to do is attack the body of Dricus, because him being so lunge heavy, his blitzes, you keep him to the body to keep him away. You slow him down. He does have great cardio, even though he was eating nasty punches against Izzy. He still kept going, right? But with Sean, if he can get on the board early, bust him up again with that jab, he can definitely win this one. Like, and it's a tough one for me because I do want to see Dricus keep the belt, but with Sean, it's hard to ignore the fact that he is so good. And I really do believe that he's already been in there with Dricus. He's felt the power. He's felt what he can do. He knows that it's going to be hard for Dricus to land on him cleanly. If he just adjusts a few things, throw a little bit more volume, get his head right, have Alex say Chama to him a few times, he's going to be throwing more volume, attacking the body, maybe pushing forward more, closing that distance, and engaging. The problem is with Sean, if I'm going to be honest, is that with Dricus, if he's throwing all that crazy volume, when Sean is throwing punches, it takes away from that defense, which makes him vulnerable to punches and, getting knocked out. And with that nasty knockout power of Dricus, which is just ridiculous, like autistic type of power, it's ridiculous, man. If he catches Sean, that'd be fantastic. It'd be crazy. But I'm going to go with Sean on this one. I think that he can actually finish Dricus. I don't know what it is, man. I don't want to put too much stock on Alex being in that corner, but knowing the type of personality Sean is, and if Alex is like, you're being a pussy, Chama, and he's like, you're right, to the death, we might actually get to see the version of Sean Strickland that he sees in the mirror, and not the guy that we see, the guy who's like, oh, to the death, and he goes out there and just jabs you for like 25 minutes. We might actually see the killer dude that he keeps talking is inside of him. So I would hope to see that. But give me Sean Strickland. I'm going to go decision because, Dricus is just so unorthodox and awkward. I expect a much better fight than the first one. People say the first fight was great. I kind of found it a bit boring. Not necessarily I wasn't too into it. I think this is going to be a much better fight. Probably going to be fight of the night because the way Dricus fights, he is a gamer, right? He fights to win. He will do whatever it takes to win. He is not a quitter. I love me some Dricus now. The problem is that with Dricus, he is just he's a perfect Ubermensch Chad. The dude is, he's a good looking dude. Oh, okay, that's fine. Whatever. He's probably a dumbass. No, he's pretty smart. I'm like, yeah, he might be smart, but he's not charming. Dude's actually really fucking funny. Well, he's never going to be champ. Well, shit, he's champ. And like, oh, he's kind of gay. Like, he's engaged to a beautiful woman. I'm like, man, fuck this guy. He's perfect. And Sean, on the other hand, we know Sean. He's just a shit talker. I like me some Sean as well. Yeah, it's really hard to pick against him at this spot. Being that it's such a 50-50 matchup, give me the plus money where I can get it. Give me Sean Strickland to win the decision. Make those adjustments. Get yourself out of that headspace. That is the biggest issue with Sean at times, is that if he's not having a good performance, he will overthink shit and he becomes too defensive. He needs to stop doing that. Throw more body shots. Be more offensive. Don't throw just a fucking jab. because that's what really cost him that fight. He was landing that jab beautifully, and then that was it. He wasn't landing the jab. Dricus was essentially countering that jab, doing well, avoiding it, and he lost the title. It just is what it is. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below about this entire card. What rambled on for about like an hour and 14 minutes. Yeah, with this Dricus and Strickland, the second fight, let me know what you think for real. Like, it's just the weird magical BS of Dricus to Plessis, and this could potentially lead because they've been kind of going back and forth, Dricus and Alex Pereira. I'm deathly afraid to find out that if Dricus moves up to 205, he's going to beat Alex. That would crush me in such a way because Alex is one of my favorite fighters, so much so that I do think that him just being in the corner of Sean is enough for Sean to like, oh, maybe throw a different punch. So that itself is like a fascinating little backstory that if Dricus is the second person to give Alex Pereira a loss, because anytime Alex does anything with another fighter, when Alex was training with Sean to beat Pereira, that was a Pereira win. Now, if Alex is training Sean to beat Dricus and Dricus beats Sean again, that is a Pereira loss, and we don't want that. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. Hopefully, y'all make some money, but I will see you in the next one.